spent 15 years working inside banks and trained as a financial advisor, watching thousands of very intelligent people convinced that they weren't good with money. And after all of that experience, I discovered that you don't need to be rich to get started. You don't need to have a financial advisor qualification, and you definitely don't need to love numbers to build wealth like the top 1%. You just need to understand how money works. And not just the practical side either. What many banks don't want you to actually know is that one of the biggest barriers to building wealth isn't your income or your ability to fall in love with numbers. It's a combination of the practical side of money and understanding your relationship to money and where you may be giving away some of your financial power. So in this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on everything that I've learned of 15 years as a financial advisor and as a money psychologist, plus the exact strategies that I've developed that have helped thousands of people to break free from financial stress and start building and holding real wealth. This is the only video that you need to transform your relationship with money, regardless of your starting point. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we're going to get really honest about where you stand financially and to discover your unique money blueprints. Then we're going to rewrite the money stories that have been holding you back and create a debt-free freedom plan. We're going to set some financial intentions or goals that actually motivate you. And by using my 15-minute weekly money template, will keep you on track. Now, as we go through, I'm going to be sharing the tools, worksheets, and assessments that make all the difference. And if you want to access any of these resources that I mentioned, including the Money Story Types assessment and my 15-minute weekly routine tracker, they're all part of my Female Financial Foundations course, which gives you everything you need to master money like the top 1%. We dive into the practical and the psychology of money. I've left the details in the description if you want to go and check it out. We're going to be covering where to keep your money in this video so that it works harder for you, when you can start investing, and how to adapt your strategy as your life cycles change. Finally, we're going to dive into the psychology of money using the 6 powerful tricks for saving more money with your brain rather than working against it. So let's get into it. Starting with section 1, getting financially naked. This is absolutely critical and the very first thing that you have to do. And there's a quote that I love that really encapsulates this beautifully. If you don't know where you come from, then you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, then you don't know where you're going. And this couldn't be more true when it comes to women and money. It wasn't until the 1960s that we could even have our own bank account. So we have a lot of conditioning around money. We have a lot of beliefs to readjust and to change when it comes to how women and money have been treated. And yet so many of us skip this step completely. We check our Instagram 20 times a day, but we avoid looking at our bank account. And we know exactly how many likes our last post got, but we have no idea what we spent last month. Now, before you can make any real progress, you have to know exactly where you are today. This is about really getting clear and honest about the snapshot of your current finances. And this can be really challenging emotionally because we feel guilt or we feel shame. But actually, what I found from working with so many people is that the feeling is worse than the actual doing. And these numbers will give you so much insight. And there are really 3 numbers that should live in your head. The first one is your net income per year. The second is your expenses every year, your spending. And your third is your income surplus or your income deficit. Now, you might be wondering, well, why yearly, right? Because as women, our spending is rarely consistent month to month. We have irregular expenses that potentially some male-focused budgeting advice completely ignores. We have beauty treatments, we have clothing for different seasons, we have gifts for everyone's birthdays, those emergency shopping trips when nothing quite fits, right? We have things that men don't have. And so it is important to look at some of those irregular expenses as well. So we do this by starting with your net income. That is basically how much lands in your account after tax. If you're a business owner, this is how much you are paying yourself from your business account into your personal account. So this will be a salary. This might be some revenue from side businesses. It might be child benefit. It could be maintenance payments, freelance work, all of the things. And we want to add all of those up across the year. Then we want to look at your yearly expenses. Now, most women, I find in this piece, are brilliant at hiding spending from ourselves. You know, those smaller purchases, which over a period of time do compound to be quite significant amounts. And so looking at both your regular bills and the irregular spending is crucial. And that does include our emotional purchases, the convenience spending, the I deserve these moments. And this will take a little bit of time to gather together, but what that will do is enable you to give you a really full picture of the life that you are wanting to maintain, right? And so once we have that number, we can subtract that spending from your income. And that number is everything because it tells you whether you're moving forward or whether you're staying stuck. It tells you a lot about your value system and what is important for you to spend money on. This isn't a judgment exercise. This is about getting really brutally honest with what is important for you to spend in alignment with the way that you want to live. And so if that number is a negative and we're spending more than you're earning, well, then over time, that's going to drain your savings and increase your debt. If it's positive, then that's your surplus. That's the money you have left to invest and build your future. So that's the first figure to work out. Next is your net worth. Now, this is everything that you own minus everything that you owe. So your assets might be things like your property. It might be investments. It might be savings accounts that you have. And your liabilities are things like your mortgages, any loans, and credit card debt. And the important piece here is that your income buys you your lifestyle, but your net worth buys you your freedom. Every financial decision that you make either build your assets or build your liabilities. Now, one thing that often gets ignored, which is absolutely vital for women, is understanding your relationship to money. So hear me out with this. Let's imagine that as a woman, right, you have been shaped by generations of female financial conditioning and the stories that we tell ourselves. And these stories are influenced by factors such as societal conditions, parents' beliefs around money, things that you learned growing up, religious influences, many influences that determine how we feel and think about money. And this has a huge impact on how you save, what you spend money on, and what feels safe in our nervous system, what feels exciting with money. And I've developed a very specific assessment that identifies what your dominant money story type is from 5 distinct types. See which one you resonate with here. The first one is the pacifist. The pacifist very much sees money as something to avoid. It's financial conflict. This can show up particularly if you've been financially rescued by somebody. Perhaps your parents have paid off your loans thinking they're going to help, but it fuels this belief that money is not a good thing and too much money is too much responsibility. Then we have the innovator. The innovator very often are business owners. They see money as just a tool. They're very comfortable with taking risks, quite abundant in terms of how they manifest, and they just seem to spot opportunities everywhere. They say yes to lots of things. Then we have the impulsive, and the impulsive is the action taker. They make really fast, swift decisions. They thrive on this like adrenaline rush of spending. And then we have the enabler, and the enabler are wonderful caretakers of money for other people. They're always great at being very generous with spending money or time on other people, but struggle to spend on themselves. And then we have finally the architect, and the architect these are the guys that have all the budget planners. They're excellent planners around money, planning for the future, not very tempted by these kind of get rich quick schemes, and like to have their ducks in a row. Now, the challenge for the architect is that they can struggle with making quick decisions. They struggle with taking risks, holding too much cash than potentially moving money from cash to investments. And so you can take your assessment right now at catherinemorgan.com/quiz. It takes just 5 minutes and you will get some incredible insights into your money patterns. You will get a full 15-page PDF report, which gives you some immediate tips of what you can go and do to instantly change your relationship with money, and some of the practical ways that you can start to create some systems that are going to work for you based on that natural relationship with money. Understanding your money story type is going to really help you to build that strategy that actually works with your natural tendencies, not against them. So if you're wondering why a budget plan never works for you, this might be the exact reason. It also shows you which supportive behaviors from your underexpressed type you can develop to create more balance. And the key here is really just keeping it ridiculously simple, like using whatever budgeting or tracking method works for you. That might be a notebook. It might be an app. It might be a spreadsheet. It might be that rather than having a budget planner, we have a future self money plan. Or even just ditching the word plan. Sometimes that can feel very restrictive, especially for the impulsive money story type. But we have to know numbers. We have to have an understanding of our starting point in order for all of these pieces to come together. So by the end of this session, you'll have complete clarity on where you stand, getting financially naked, and only then can you start building the financial future that you really, really want. So moving on to section 2, rewriting your money story. And this is where the real transformation begins. Now, don't be tempted to skip this part or to press pause on this video because you're like, that's not specific. It's not strategy based. It's not practical. Here's what I've discovered working inside banks and working with thousands and thousands of people is that we are not bad with money. We are held back by our relationship with money, the beliefs that we carry, the stories that we carry that were programmed into us before we could even spell the word budget. And they're not just random thoughts. These are generational money scripts that have literally passed down through 3 generations, from mother to daughter, from grandmother to granddaughter, and often without anyone even realizing that it's happening. And let me give you an example. I call this the Mr. and Mrs. Kringle effect, and it happens in relationships everywhere. So I want you to imagine that Mr. Kringle grew up in a household where his father worked incredibly long hours building a successful business. He'd come home exhausted, he'd take a shower, and he would shower the gifts to the children that he'd bought that day because he felt guilty about being absent. And the unconscious message around money here is that money equals love. If I spend money on people, they'll know I care about them. Now, meanwhile, Mrs. Kringle grew up hearing money doesn't grow on trees and we can't afford that. And so every time she wanted something, her parents were frugal by necessity, and she learned that careful spending and saving was the most responsible thing to do. So let's fast forward to Christmas time. Mr. Kringle wants to buy loads of gifts for the children because that's how he shows love, and he uses money as a way to replace the guilt that he actually feels for not being as present as he would like to be. And Mrs. Kringle panics because overspending feels irresponsible and dangerous. Now, what do you think might happen at Christmas time for this couple? Neither of them are wrong, but these 2 contrasting money stories are now in conflict. It creates arguments, resentment, financial stress, and not because of the money itself, but because of the stories that they tell themselves and what money means. And as women, we carry additional layers of money stories. Stories like, I'm not good with numbers. This was a big one for me, especially now learning and understanding as a neurodivergent that I was always telling myself, I'm not good with numbers. Even though for many women, we manage household budgets. We calculate sales discounts in our heads. We track multiple family schedules simultaneously, you know? And also we carry stories like money's complicated when we successfully navigate quite complex decisions about childcare, healthcare, or family logistics every single day. This is further fueled by the financial service industry, who make money seem complicated. And we also carry stories like, I don't deserve more money. I don't deserve more money when there are people struggling in the world. Maybe we've been taught that wanting financial success makes us selfish or materialistic. Or perhaps somebody else should handle the investments, because investing has been positioned as a man's world for generations. And the truth is, these stories are not even true. They're just beliefs that were formed likely before you were even born. And beliefs can be changed. So here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to think about your own money story. What did you hear about money growing up? What did you observe? How did your parents handle money? What did they say about wealthy people? What messages did you absorb about women and money? And write down the first 3 money beliefs that come to mind. Don't overthink it. Just write what you honestly believe about money, even if it feels negative. And the next part of this is that for each belief, I want you to rewrite it. I want you to ask yourself, is this even true? Is this belief really true? Where is the evidence to disprove this belief about money? And I really want you to think about, how has it been supporting you by holding this money belief? How has it been supporting you? And how has it been sabotaging you? Because if you believe that money is the root of all evil, well, is that really true? Where have you learnt this? And are there examples where money can be used for good? Maybe this is one of your investing decisions, that you are going to decide to take out all of the sin stocks of the stock market, or you're going to invest in sustainable, ethical funds so that money can be used to build your personal wealth and do good in the world. And this isn't just positive thinking. This is rewriting your entire financial operating system. Because until you change the beliefs that are keeping you stuck, the numbers don't actually even matter. You can have the perfect budget, the best investment plan, the highest income, but if your unconscious believes that you don't deserve it or you can't handle it, you will sabotage yourself every time. Believe me, as a financial advisor in my 20s, I was living in £30,000 worth of debts, even though I knew all the things about money, because money for me was dangerous. And the most successful women I've worked with have done all this work first. They've identified their money stories, they've challenged them, and they've consciously rewrote those stories, creating new behaviors and new habits that are changing the generations ahead of them. So here's your homework. I want you to go away and do that exercise and create one powerful money affirmation based on that rewritten story and belief. Maybe it is safe for me to be the highest wage earner in my family. It is safe for me to change the generational beliefs in my family. It is safe to me to be the first millionaire in my family. It is safe for me to ask for more money, right? Go and create yourself a powerful money affirmation. Take a screenshot, put it on your phone, on your wallpaper, put it on a sticky note on your fridge. Remind yourself every day. Because without consistency, these old patterns are going to creep back in, and your brain needs repetition to create these new neural pathways. This isn't just about feeling better with money, although you will. It's about removing those barriers that keep you playing small. Because once you believe that you actually deserve money and you're capable of creating it, everything else becomes possible. So moving on to section 3, your debt freedom plan. Now, if you have any debt, then a bit of structure and strategy can make all of the difference. Now, the first thing to understand is that not all debt is created equal. Some debt can actually build your future if you manage it well. And I think there's a big messaging piece around the word debt. The word debt brings in, for many of us, a lot of shame and judgment. So many of us may have heard from our parents or grandparents, don't borrow money, right? Debt is bad. But actually, think about a mortgage. A mortgage helps you to own and appreciate. I can't get my words out today. A mortgage helps you own an appreciating asset. A student loan increases your earning potential. These kind of debts can work in your favor over time, but other debts can work against you. So things like credit card debts or payday loans, buy now, pay later schemes, they all seem harmless at first, but the costs can really stack up behind the scenes and literally drain your wealth faster than you can build it. Now, as women, we often carry debt differently than men. We're more likely to use credit for family expenses, unexpected costs for children, or to smooth out irregular income, particularly if you're in business. And we're also more likely to feel shame around debt, which keeps us from addressing it strategically. So step one is to get financially naked and get all of your debt information in one place. Use a spreadsheet, a notebook, an app, whatever works for you. But for every debt that you have, write down the total amount that you owe, the interest rates, the minimum payment, and the due date. These are key pieces of information which are going to help you to create your financial freedom dates. Now, another small tip here is that to maybe just reframe the word debt. This is money already spent. Money already spent. You've already made the decisions. And if you're feeling any guilt or shame about those decisions, they've passed. They've gone. There's no benefit to holding that guilt and shame around money already spent. Okay, now once everything is laid out, you can choose your repayment strategy. So there are two main approaches. Both can work, and it's about which one fits you psychologically better. The first one is the debt avalanche method. Now, with this approach, you rank your debts from highest to lowest based on the interest rate. So you pay as much money as you can towards the one that charges the most interest, whilst keeping minimum amounts on the others. And then you work your way down the list. The avalanche method is mathematically the most efficient. It will save you the most money over time. And if you're motivated by numbers and long-term thinking, then this is your approach. This is quite valuable for the architect, such as the architect money story type. The impulsive money story type may prefer the first option. Now, the second option is the debt snowball method. And here you pay off your debts from the smallest to the largest amount, regardless of the interest rate. So, for example, if you've got two credit cards, one has £500 and one has £5,000, you start by paying off the £500 credit card first. You get this quick win, this adrenaline rush by paying off that smaller debt first. That builds momentum, it builds confidence, and then you go for the next one. Now, the snowball method is more emotional, but it works because it's psychologically motivating. So if you need to see progress quickly, if you're impatient, if you're impulsive, if you're neurodivergent, this is your method. Now, here's what I've also learned from working with thousands of people is that for women specifically, we often need the emotional wins more than the mathematical perfection. So if the avalanche method leaves you feeling overwhelmed or like you're not making progress, choose the snowball. Both approaches are infinitely better than doing nothing. And for credit card debt specifically, have a look into whether you can do a balance transfer. Now, this allows you to move existing debt from one card to a new credit card with 0% interest for a limited time, typically 12 months or 24 months. Now, it doesn't get rid of the debt, but it stops interest from piling up whilst you pay it off. Be mindful of any transfer fees and make absolutely sure that you have a clear plan to pay it off, ideally before the 0% period ends. One of the ways to do this is by setting up an automatic payment from your bank account off the credit card. Now, let's talk about credit versus debit cards, because how you use them does shape your financial habits, particularly now we live in a very cashless society. Now, a debit card is spending your own money and it pulls cash straight from your account. Once that money's gone, it's gone. A credit card spends the bank's money, and then if you don't pay it back, then they'll charge you for that privilege. Now, here's the thing. If you use credit cards wisely, paying them off every month, they can actually be a really smart financial tool. They can offer cash back, they can offer points and rewards, travel awards, for example. I know my American Express I use for my food shop. I pay it off every month and I accumulate a free companion voucher for my family holidays. They are also great if you're making bigger purchases for fraud protection. And also sometimes you get additional guarantees and warranties. Now, you're getting free benefits, right? Because you're spending money that you were going to spend anyway. And that's the thing to try and remember with credit cards, is that if you use them wisely, they can be a really smart financial tool. And also they can get you out of tricky situations, right? If you can't afford to pay for something outright, you probably shouldn't be putting it on a credit card, but there are a few exceptions. Healthcare, for me, if you need to go get treatment, your health is wealth. Health is so important. It could be that it's an investment in your education. It could be that those examples can actually support your financial well-being rather than taking it away. Now, let me just have a little word for a moment on the save first, spend later. Now, this protects you from the debt trap, right? That keeps many of us financially stuck, because every payment that you make on debt is money that could have been building your future instead. The faster you therefore can clear higher interest rate debt, the faster you're going to start to build real wealth. And if you're working through debt and want the specific calculators and tracking sheets I've mentioned in here, they're all part of my Female Financial Foundations course, along with some step-by-step guidance for your situation. I'll pop the link in the notes in case you are interested here. But the key is just to get started. Pick a method, make the plan, begin something towards that, which is really going to create that momentum for you. And I think the first thing to do is to practice some self-forgiveness. If you're holding some guilt and shame, practice self-forgiveness, hold compassion for yourself, that these are decisions that you've made, they've now gone by, and now it's about moving forward. So moving on to section 4, setting goals that actually motivate you. Now, this is absolutely crucial because if we don't know what we're aiming for, then it is difficult to make the right decisions with money. And the word goals on their own can be scary. They can feel really unmotivating for many people. Certainly for me, as an impulsive money story type, the word goal feels very masculine. And there's also a risk of, well, what happens if I don't reach that goal? Then I'll feel like a failure. And we have fear of success that comes in, or fear of failure that comes in, that literally rocks our psychology. And so when we're talking about goals, maybe think about how you could change the word financial goals to intentions or milestones or rituals or routines, something that just feels more expansive in your nervous system rather than contracted. And speaking from being a financial advisor for many, many years, most financial advice treats everyone in a similar way when it comes to psychology, right? But when it comes to our goals as women, sometimes they are different, right? We're not just planning for ourselves. We're having to consider our partners, our children, aging parents, career breaks, life changes that sometimes traditional advice ignores. I know for many of my friends, they've had to close down their business or take a year out to go and care for their aged parent. The fact that we live longer than men as well does factor in to our financial goal planning. So before we dive into savings accounts and investment platforms, I want you just to hit pause for a moment. Grab a pen, piece of paper, your phone, or a notes app, and just write down one financial intention that you have. What is something that feels really expansive, that would feel really motivating and joyful for you to have? Write down all the ones that feel impossible. the ones that other people have told you that are unrealistic, the ones that you've been doubting. Just write all of them down. Maybe it's taking a year off to go travel. Maybe it's an emotional goal of never having to worry about money again, creating emotional stability with your relationship with money. Maybe it's being able to support your children through university without them having to take on debt. Maybe it's starting your own business or retiring early. Whatever it is, write it down, because your goals, your intentions are things you want to bring into the body. You want them to feel good. And when they feel good, you're more likely to take action. Now, next to each of those goals, you might want to write down when you'd like to achieve it. Not because you're going to beat yourself up if it doesn't happen at that point, but it gives yourself a timeline. And this might sound like a small step, but trust me, it's everything. And in our Female Financial Foundation course, we talk about this analogy of the fridge, freezer, larder. So when you start to put timelines on, you can start to understand where to store your money based on that analogy. The fridge is your kind of emergency, need to access it quite quickly accounts. Those are things like bank accounts or instant access savings accounts. Then you've got your larder, which are like your tins of baked beans, your herbs, your spices, things that you wouldn't necessarily need access to every day, but maybe with a month's notice. And then you have your freezer, which are your longer term investment accounts. And so having this timeline can really help you then to understand where to hold that money so that you're not taking unnecessary risk and you're actually then going to meet those intentions. Okay. Now, let me show you exactly what I mean with just a little piece of historical data as well that will probably surprise you. So over the last 100 years, anybody who invested their money in the stock market and held it for at least 20 years never lost money. Not once. And in every 20-year cycle in the stock market delivered positive returns. Even in the weakest periods, even when we had market downfalls, right? We still return positive amounts on our money. And here's what really is really exciting, right? Is that 79% of the time, 20-year returns were 8% or higher, and 59% of the time they were 10% or higher. So let's translate that into real numbers. If you invested £10,000 and left it alone for 20 years, at a 4% return, that becomes 21,900. At an 8% return, that becomes 46,600. And at a 10% return, that becomes 67,300. That is the power of giving your money time, right? That's the power of investing. We also have an investing course, our Get Investing course, which teaches you how to navigate the basics of getting started with your first investment portfolio. This is an area that I love to talk to women about, especially because it's really empowering to be able to build your own wealth independently of anybody else, whether you're in a relationship or not, right? Again, I'll pop a link to that in the description. Now, if you don't have 20 years to invest, maybe your goal is 10 years away, then that's also a great way to consider investments. And I would say generally my experience as a financial advisor is as long as you've got at least 5 years to be investing, that will be the minimum period to give yourself a little chance to navigate the volatility in the stock markets, right? There's a lot of talk in the markets about risk, the risks of investing. And yes, we need to be aware of those risks. But really, in reality, it's about choosing a portfolio that feels aligned to your values, that is in line with the time period that you're allowed to, prepared to invest, and then also just making a carefully considered choice of having a well-diversified portfolio that is going to have some ups and downs, but actually, even over a 10-year period, there are still solid positive returns in the stock market, often double digits. There were a few exceptions. If you invested in 1998 and you sold in 2008, then right after the financial crisis, you would have had a small loss, right? If you'd have then cashed in your investment. But for many of us, we just left it. We left it invested and the markets recovered. So comparing that to keeping money, for just 1 year, the returns become completely unpredictable. And you could make a lot, but you could lose a lot, right? And so this is why the timeline changes everything. Keeping enough money in your fridge first, building your emergency fund, your financial freedom funds, then building into your larder and then into your freezer, right? And it is important, especially for women, because we do have more complex timelines than men. So let's categorize some of these goals, right? So I've talked about this fridge, freezer, larder approach. So short-term goals, anything over the next kind of 0 to 5 years. This is going to be cash-based, predominantly savings accounts, things for Christmas presents, your holidays for the next few years, maybe a house deposit that you want to pull together soon. This money needs to be accessible and not at the mercy of markets ups and downs, right? The second part is your larder. This is the medium term goals. This is maybe kind of like, sort of 3 to 5 years. So it kind of crosses over the fridge part. We don't need instant access to it, but it might be children's education costs that are coming up where we know that the time frame is 3 years' time or 4 years' time. So not enough to be invested with that minimum 5-year time frame, but maybe 3 years' time we know that Freddie is going to go off to university, right? Or maybe you're wanting to take a sabbatical. And so you would maybe put that kind of money in things like fixed rate bonds, cash bonds, or something that has a fixed time frame on it. And typically the banks will give you more interest in exchange for locking that money away for a period of time. Now, the investing part, the freezer part, is things for the longer term, right? This is where we're building assets, we're building financial independence for the future. This is kind of retirement timeframes. It might be when you're selling your business. It might be putting money aside for your children when they've just been born. These are areas where you want to tuck that money away and pretty much forget about it. You can do that not just with lump sums, but you can be investing in the stock market on a monthly basis. It's another really great way to reduce risk because you're buying money in the stock market over a period of time. A little bit like shopping for your clothes. You want to be buying your clothes when they're on sale, not necessarily when the market is high, but we don't know when the market's going to be high. So we drip feed it in month by month. And there are many investment portfolios now where you can start with just £25 per month. Now, this exercise, this timeline exercise, the fridge, freezer, larder, is really going to help you to just bring some timelines in, have an idea of what is the strategy for that goal and where is the best place to hold it. Now, remember, this isn't just about the money. When you've got these clear timelines, you can stop making random financial decisions, ones that are reactive rather than proactive, so that every choice becomes very strategic, giving every pound a purpose. Every decision moves you closer to maintaining the life that you are creating. And for the very first time, you can see exactly what's possible when you combine these goals and strategies and timeframes. And that's when financial freedom stops becoming a dream and actually starts being inevitable. So moving on to section 5, the 15-minute weekly money routine. And this is where we turn everything that you have desired and planned and visualized into reality. Now, up until now, we've figured out where you are now, getting financially naked, and started to consider what is it that you want for your future, parking it into those fridge, freezer, larder pots. Now we want to turn that into a practical system that actually helps you build the life that you are aiming for. Now, I know the word budgeting can make you want to run for the hills, and it sounds restrictive, tedious, like a financial diet that's destined to fail, but understanding money and your numbers is the most important thing. Throw the budgeting language out of the window and just start to consider, when you're doing your 15-minute money routine, is to think about all the goals that you've written down, think about the different destinations, the places that you want to put that money. And now you're just creating the roadmap that makes it all work together. a bit like, jumping in a car. You wouldn't just start randomly driving, not knowing where you're going, and hopefully end up where you want to. You'd plan out the route, you'd have enough fuel, you'd use your dashboard to keep track of your progress. And that's what we're creating here. You want to create a 12-month financial forecast in your roadmap. We want to create these monthly check-ins on your dashboard. And these weekly 15-minute routines is what keeps you on track. And this is the bit I would say that most people fail, because they might create the plan, but then they don't create the regular rhythm, the routine, whatever word feels good for you. And this works way better than just budgeting, right? Traditional budgets focus on restricting money, why you can't spend. But my approach really focuses on intention, what you choose to spend your money on based on your values and your goals. And as we've already mentioned, as women, our spending is really consistent month to month. So we have regular expenses, school uniforms, birthday presents, beauty treatments, all of those things, right? So instead of trying to predict every expense, we're going to create a system that works with real life. So first, we want to create a baseline. This is what happens if I keep going like this plan. So take what you've learned about your income and your spending patterns from the Getting Financially Naked, and we're going to project it forward for the next 12 months. But here's where we can get strategic. So before we allocate everything out, we're going to put your savings and investments in first, right? This way, building your future isn't just something that happens as an afterthought, it's prioritized. And there is a really nice, friendly budgeting analogy, which I quite like. And it's called the 50-30-20 rule. And it helps you to visualize your spending by putting your take-home pay into 3 buckets. So the 50% goes to your basic needs. These are things like rent, mortgage payments, food, transportation, childcare, utility bills, everything that you need for basic living. The 30% goes to your wants. This is the fun money. This is what makes life enjoyable. Going out to eat, socializing with friends, having your hobbies, entertainment, social plans with friends. This is guilt-free spending because it's planned and it's intentional. And the 20% goes to future you, the savings, the investments, the extra debt repayments potentially. This is what builds the financial freedom. Now, you might be thinking, well, my amounts of money don't fit into those percentages. Don't worry. They're just a starting point. And you might find, especially if you're an impulsive story type, having a framework can actually provide a lot of structure and emotional freedom because you've got something to work towards. Now, you might find that your needs are 60% and your future savings are 10% right now. You might find that your needs are 70%, particularly with the cost of living right now, and your future savings have gone to 5%. That's totally okay. The key is knowing where you stand and having a framework to work towards. So here is the 15-minute weekly routine and how it works. So every week, I want you first of all to put some time in your calendar, a time when you're not going to be interrupted. A Sunday morning is quite nice for this in our household, or it could be a Monday morning when everyone's at school, people are off to work, and you want to spend an intentional 15 minutes reviewing your spending from the previous week. Look at your bank statements, check your credit card transactions, review your cash spending, and ask yourself 3 simple questions. First of all, did I need this? Go through each expense and honestly assess, was it essential? Were you being driven by a dopamine need, an adrenaline rush? Did you need this? And secondly, if you did need this, could you have got it for less? Could you have switched providers? Could you have found a better deal? And then thirdly, does this spending align with your values and goals? So sometimes we spend money on things that we don't actually make us happy or move us towards what we want. I'm a big advocate for financial well-being and happiness. And financial well-being isn't about having stuff in your life, But there may be some things that do bring happiness and joy into your life externally. And you might be avoiding buying something that you really want because you're worried about how people are going to judge you, right? And I think it's really important to balance this piece between what brings you happiness and joy, but real internal intrinsic happiness, not just temporary happiness because we're going to buy that new dress or book that holiday and then we come back and we still feel miserable because actually the thing that's causing the misery is our jobs or our relationships, right? Or our environments, or we're not actually tackling the real cause of the issue. So that's the beauty of doing these things weekly, is we really get some insight into, well, how do I feel about money this week? Right? How do I feel about money this week? Has it caused me stress? How do I feel about it? And what I like to do as well is to pick one money area every month to focus on. So over a 12-month period, you can get your calendar and color code it and think about, well, in this month, in January, I'm going to focus on setting my financial goals and working out which amounts are going to go into my fridge, freezer, larder pots. In February, you might think, well, it's the month of love. I'm going to really focus on my relationship with money. In March, you might decide, well, kind of spring's coming in, right? I'm going to start to really focus on getting most amount of interest on my savings. I'm going to shop around for the best interest rates on my savings. You come into April, you might decide, do you know what? I'm going to focus on maximizing my ISA allowances. You might decide in October around Will Month, where a lot of charities will offer free will writing services, to go make the will or update your will if you have one already, right? And just having one focus each month is a really lovely way to build in momentum and curiosity around different money subjects. So we do that every week. And then once a month, we do this deeper review. Every month, you might then decide to get out your spending plan rather than your budget plan. You might decide to go and have a conversation into a deeper aspect of your 50, 30, 20 targets. You might see what adjustments might need to happen based on your lifestyle changes. And there are some really easy wins that can make a huge difference over 12 months. So things like utilities and subscriptions, calling providers, negotiating better deals. They'd rather keep you as a customer than lose you. So that's a good thing to do regularly, at least once every 12 months. Maybe with your food shop, food is one of the most expensive things in my household for sure. So maybe start considering how you could shop and how much of your budget is being allocated to food. I definitely found that shopping once a week saved me more money than doing these random 3 or 4 shops a week, right? And these are small changes. They're not going to break the bank. They're not necessarily going to make you money. And this is the other thing, is that we don't just want to focus on plugging those money leaks and looking at our expenses. We also want to focus on making money, right? We live in a society right now where people are making money from ridiculous things, right? And so I do think it's critical, especially for women, to don't just be frugal and manage the household budget, but really start to be curious about how could you accelerate your wealth? How could you accelerate your wealth by getting curious about investment strategies, stock market portfolios, cryptocurrency, right? Getting really curious and spending time learning about these things, educating yourself. Because investing in other companies is a great way to benefit from some of the amazing things that they are doing in the world. It's your way of contributing to causes that you believe in and also building your personal wealth at the same time. And it is never too late. It is never too late. If you're listening to this in your 50s or your 60s, it is never too late to get started investing. So don't just focus on the things that most people talk about for women and saving money and budgeting, right? Focus on investing, things that are going to move the needle far greater than shopping around and saving some money on some of your subscriptions. Okay. So moving on to section 6, where to keep your money. Well, when it comes to saving, most women do this the wrong way, right? Because we don't get financial education. People don't teach us this. And what I've learned working inside banks for over 15 years is that when you keep your money in a bank account, the bank is not just storing it, they're using it. They are making a lot of money from your money, right? Banks take your money, they lend it out to someone who's maybe buying a house through a mortgage, and maybe someone starting a business or financing a car, and they charge those borrowers more in interest than what they are paying you to leave your money sitting in cash. Okay? That's how they work. That's how they make money. The difference between what they charge borrowers and what they pay you in your savings account is called the net interest margin, just a fancy term for their profit. So when you're earning 1% on your savings, that same money is being lent out at 6%. And that 5% margin is the bank's profit. And if you're not shopping around for the best rates, you're basically handing them that extra profit for free. Now, I don't know about you, and I've worked in banks for many, many years. I think that we often are so loyal to our banks, and more loyal than we should really be. You know, just because your mother or grandmother opened that bank account 25 years ago doesn't mean that we need to stay loyal to them, right? This is about building your personal wealth so that you can use that money to live your most enriched life and use that money to do good in the world. So comparing rates using independent comparison sites, not just your current bank's marketing materials. And when you're comparing, think about what you actually need. If you need access to that money, then you do want to keep it in the fridge. Easy access savings accounts. If you're happy to give notice, maybe 60 days, 90 days, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you will get better rates with notice accounts. So long as interest rates don't go up, right? That's the gamble you're making by locking money away. So don't just look at traditional high street banks. Online banks or newer financial platforms offer very often much better competitive rates because they have lower overheads, so they can pass more of that profit back to you. And what you're really looking for is when you go onto a website, if you're not sure about the safety, maybe you've never heard of this organization, right? Go and make sure that they are registered with the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. They are regulated by the FCA, these are the regulators that basically kick in and protect you up to a certain amount with your cash. And I'll pop a link below this video for you to check those rules out. But if you're talking about 3 or 4% interest compared to 0.5 you might get from a traditional bank over a year on 10 grand, that's a difference of earning 350 rather than 50. That's quite a lot of money that you're leaving on the table, right? So we want to look specifically for your fridge money, instant access quickly. We want easy access accounts from reputable providers. You want instant access more than the interest rate, right? That's the most important thing for the fridge. The money you're saving for specific goals in a year's time, 2 years' time, consider those notice accounts. And for longer term in the fridge, looking at investment platforms that offer investment opportunities, which are going to offer you better rates than traditional banks or leaving it in cash, right? As long as we can leave that money and be prepared to ride some of the volatility of the ups and downs of the stock market. Now, something to mention here as well is that matching your savings strategy to your timeline is really important. We've already talked about that. But also don't just put everything in one account because it's convenient. For a lot of women, I see this a lot, is that joint accounts, make sure that you have access to the information about those accounts. Maybe also consider setting up some individual savings as well. Financial independence means that having access to money in your own name regardless of your financial status. I am a trained and qualified financial abuse specialist, and having your own money is so important, right? And whilst we're not going to go into that particular topic in this particular video, every percentage point matters and every access matters. So making sure you have got access to your own money, I think, is really, really important. So take an hour this week. Go and research your options. Move your money into accounts that actually rewards you rather than penalizing you for being loyal. Your future self will thank you for every single pound that those better rates generate. And let's now move on to section 7. When women start investing, this is like the £1 million question, isn't it? Like, something quite literally changes. We often wait too long to start investing. We tell ourselves that we need to understand everything perfectly, or we need to have more money saved first, or we need to pay off every single debt before we even think about it. But actually, in reality, every year that we delay this, we know that we're literally losing thousands towards financial freedom. And as women, we often have longer lifespans, more complex financial needs. So it does make sense that investing is to be prioritized. So let me give you a clear roadmap that balances this protection for growth that is designed for you. So step 1 is to consider saving up to at least, I would say, 3 months of your living expenses. So before anything else, get at least 3 months, 1 month at worst. Like if you were really wanting to start investing, get 1 month of basic security in place. Okay, this is your first line of defense. This will mean that you can sleep at night. It means if you have to take some time out, you've got money there. If you're self-employed, I would recommend a higher amount, maybe 6 months worth of expenses, because you won't necessarily have things like sick pay benefits to fall back on. And so if you do have sick pay benefits, that does alter the amount that potentially wouldn't be required to be held in that emergency fund. So that's step 1, working out what that is for you. Step 2 is to pay off the highest interest debt. Target everything that's got interest rates over maybe like 8%, 10%. And that's 20% credit card debt or high interest personal loan is literally draining your wealth faster than most investments can build. So paying these off gives you a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate. And you won't find that in an investment market, right? You could run the risk that, well, I could invest the money instead and it would get more than 8%, but it's not guaranteed. And for me personally, I think having emotional security is more important than anything else, rather than taking risks that you don't necessarily need to take. So get the high interest debts paid off first. And then step 3 is then starting to continue to build that financial security fund and then start investing at the same time, right? And here's why this simultaneous approach works better for women. It's psychologically more motivating because you're making progress on multiple fronts. You get to see your financial security funds growing and watch your investments building at the same time. Often if we're just in this paying debts off or building emergency funds, it can feel quite contracting. So maybe splitting your allocation of having 70% of your surplus money after all your bills, building your emergency fund, your financial security funds, and then 30% towards investments. And this exact split will depend on your comfort level. It will depend on how you feel like in your body, not just because I'm telling you this split, but the key is moving forward on both. Okay, so your financial security fund should eventually reach 6 months of living expenses, though as women, I'd often recommend leaning towards the higher end, maybe even pushing that a little bit higher, because we are more likely to experience career disruptions, family responsibilities, or need time off for life transitions. And you don't need to have thousands of pounds to get started investing. Many platforms now allow you to begin with just £25 a month. That's less than what we probably spend on coffees or some of our beauty products. And the magic isn't in the amounts, it's just in the getting started. It's in the habit itself. Somebody who invests £50 a month at age 25 will obviously have more in retirement than somebody who waited till they're 35 and they would need to be investing maybe 100 a month, right? Time is powerful, but there is no point in beating yourself up if you're listening to this and thinking, I wish I'd started this 20 years ago, right? Don't let perfectionism stop you from getting started. Now, that includes the desire to research every option, understand every risk, feel completely confident before we get started. I can tell you myself from being a financial advisor, I still have to make imperfect decisions of things that I don't quite understand, but I know enough to understand that it's going to support me. I know enough to make a decision that keeping my money in cash for 20-year time horizon is not going to be best sat in my bank account. And you don't need to pick the perfect investment on day one. You can start with something basic, very reasonable, and learn as you go. So many investment platforms now give you recommendations. You fill out risk questionnaires and they'll tell you the type of portfolio that is best suited. There are some investment managers that will give you the whole allocation in advance. You don't need to learn everything. And the most successful investors get started before they feel ready, right? Just begin with a simple, diversified fund, learn from that experience, get curious, and then gradually learn more over time. And again, I'll pop a link in the description below to my Get Investing course. If you want to learn the basics of investing, it's a great place to start. So here is your homework. If you've completed step 1 and 2, then commit to start the next step this month. Open an investment account, set it up with your first £25 a month, and start building wealth that will give you choices later in life. So many of us want to build financial security, but it's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect knowledge, right? Just get started. So let's move on to the next section. Let's talk about investment strategies for different life stages. Now, this is really important. Most investment advice doesn't take this into account. We shouldn't be investing the same way throughout our entire life. So you might be thinking, Catherine, I've got my investment sorted. I'm contributing to my pension. I'm all sorted, right? But as women, our priorities change, our responsibilities shift, and our investment strategy needs to evolve with that. So what works in your 20s when you're single and career focused is very different to what makes sense in your 40s when you might be managing family finances and thinking about your children's education. So let me break this down by life stage. In your 20s and your 30s, time is your greatest asset. You probably have 30 to 40 years until retirement, which means you can afford to take more risk because you've got literally decades to ride out the investment markets. And this is where you'd have a growth-focused portfolio. You would likely have 90, even 100% in equities, stock-based funds where you're not necessarily having to put in some of the more conservative, lower risk investments like corporate bonds or government yield, like government bonds, right? It will be more volatile, but this will deliver the highest longer term returns. And when you're at this stage of your life, embrace those market ups and downs. Those scary drops that make headlines, well, they're actually opportunities to buy more investments at lower prices. So your monthly contributions are buying more shares when prices fall, which benefits you over time, right? Just like you would buy your clothes. You want to buy them in a sale, not when they're at full price. In your 30s and 40s, however, I'm in my 40s right now, and for sure, my investment goals are changing. You might be building a family, you might be buying a bigger house, you might be dealing with childcare costs, right? And so your investment strategy needs to balance growth as well, but a little bit of variation. You might need to reallocate some of your investment contributions towards children's investments. You might decide, actually, I need to keep a bit more money back because my expenses have gone up and I'm going to reduce my investment contributions. Now, people don't talk about this. People are like, save more next year, more the year after, more the year after. In reality, your 30s and 40s, especially if you have a family, is the most expensive time in your life, right? And I do really believe in having this balance between living in the here and now and planning for the future. So you might decide to actually accelerate the level of risk that you are currently taking on your investment portfolios, especially for money that's for the longer term, right? because maybe you can't afford to contribute as much for a 10-year period whilst your children are young. Most people will talk about reducing risk, but actually in this life age where you're still working, you're earning money, you're accumulating, you can replace that money, right? Because you have the ability to. When you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, especially those latter years, when you're maybe not working, your ability to accumulate disappears. So of course you're going to need to consider lower risks, right? But I do think in your 40s and your 50s, it's not reducing risk, it's actually redirecting some of your investments into other things. You might decide to reduce your monthly contribution from 200 to 150 or 100 and put that money into an aging parents pot, so that if you need to take time off work, or you need to go and take a holiday from being a carer, like some respite, or maybe you need to have some extra money available because you're paying more in petrol, going back and forth and making sure they're okay. It's having that prepared in your mind. So if that's important for you, you can plan that ahead. Now, as you get into your retirement phase, which I think the whole retirement phase is so different and will be different for many of us going forward. This whole idea of retiring and just giving up work completely, it's not actually the reality of what most people want and desire. So many people are actually working longer. They really enjoy their work. They're growing businesses and they want to keep that going. So yes, you may get your state pension that kicks in or not, depending on the state of the retirement system in years to come. But actually, as you get older, generally speaking, the preservation of the wealth that you've been creating does become the priority. So it's not just about accelerating and growing wealth, it's protecting what you've already created. And so there is a rule in the investment world that you can take your age, you can round it up to the nearest 5, and then you subtract 10. And that's the percentage of your portfolio that should be in lower risk investments. So if you're 32, round that to 35, minus 10 is 25. 25% should go in lower risk investments. However, I don't like this approach, and I'll tell you why. As you come up towards retirement, let's say you've got a pension contribution, it's a company scheme, and your retirement allocated date is age 65. Now, some of the investments that you are making may be in funds where you are automatically de-risking in those final 5 to 10 years before retirement at 65. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no intentions on passing at 65. So if you are going to leave that money invested for the next 20, 30 years of your life, bearing in mind that the average life expectancy of a woman is into their 80s now, then why would you want to be de-risking, right? You want to potentially leave that money invested and draw off those assets as a regular income, something we call income drawdown, right? Now, this will depend on the type of pension scheme that you have, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's automatically the best thing to do. And especially if you take that example of, well, I'm 32, round that to 35, so I'm going to put 25% in things like bonds. Well, that's massively going to restrict your investment opportunity. Okay, so I would say really get interested in where the money is invested. And understanding your money story type here is crucial. Because if you're a pacifist who sees money as something to avoid, you might need a more conservative approach to just build up some level of safety with taking some responsibility to make your own financial decisions. If you're an innovator who is really comfortable with risk taking, you might be taking too much risk and want to have a conversation with somebody about, is that too much of an aggressive strategy? The key to building wealth is to stick through good times and bad times. As Warren Buffett very famously said, be fearful when the markets are greedy and be greedy when the markets are fearful, right? Some of the biggest investment mistakes are made when people panic, right? The stock markets are crashing. Everything's all over the news about it. And we go into this hoard mentality, or we follow the crowds and we're like, oh, everyone's selling, I'm going to go and sell, right? And one major risk that I see for women is this approach to risk, right? Is making those decisions without the knowledge, without the confidence to actually go, well, I'm not going to need access to this for another 20 years, so the markets can just do what they need to do, right? Because it's on paper, these ups and downs with our investment portfolios. You wouldn't worry necessarily about the price of your house unless you're going to move house. And then it becomes a fear, right? So think about that as well when it comes to your investment portfolios. And the other thing I would also say here is that age guidelines around investing, all these things that we're talking about here, they're not rules, right? If you are a single woman with no dependents, you may want to invest more aggressively than a single mum with 3 children, right? Even if you're the same age. So if you're a single woman with no dependents versus a single mum with 3 children, your appetite for risk will be different. Your life stages will be different. So the main thing is to get started, stay consistent, and adjust to your life choices. Your investment strategy should evolve with you, supporting the life that you're building at every stage. And if you're feeling overwhelmed by these choices, remember a simple, low-cost, diversified portfolio that you can contribute to will beat any complex strategy that you can't stick with. And again, I'll pop a note in the link below to my Get Investing course. So moving on to the final section, this is my favorite, the psychology of money. Let's talk about 6 tricks for saving more money, because this is where everything comes together. Being financially successful isn't just about the numbers, it's about understanding your own psychology. And what I've discovered is that the reason that so many people save naturally while others struggle has nothing to do with how smart you are or how much willpower you have. It's about the psychology. The difference comes from the learnt behaviors, patterns that we have picked up from childhood, adult experiences. Maybe we're mirroring our parents' relationship with money, or you've experienced some real disappointment of setting saving goals and then not reaching them, leaving you feeling like a failure. And as women, we often have a very curious relationship with savings. Some of us are natural architects. We save without even thinking about it. Others are more impulsive, great at spending. Neither is right or wrong. They're just different money psychologies. So here's the exciting part. You can use psychology to work with your natural tendencies rather than against them. So the first trick is to switch from pleasure-based goals to pain goals, right? So hear me out here. So instead of saying things like, I want to save for a holiday, ask yourself, what happens if I don't start saving? Maybe you won't be able to retire, travel, send the children to university, or upgrade your lifestyle. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes that shift from what you want to what you want to avoid can be motivational, right? It means that we're starting to see the consequence. It's called cost consequences. Now, sometimes that shift can also work the other way. So by setting a goal that is motivated towards something pleasurable, it can be more motivational than coming away from something that feels like we're in pain, something we're trying to avoid. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to really think about which one drives you more motivationally. Okay, we all have this innate ability to focus on immediate needs, but we often struggle to connect with our future self. And your future self is not a different person, it's just you, maybe with a few more grey hairs and wrinkles. But that version of yourself is ready to receive what you want to receive. And giving yourself that permission is the first step. So the second psychological trick is to relate your spending to an hourly rate. So before you buy anything, work out how many hours would you need to work to afford it. So if you earn £25 an hour and you want an £800 iPhone, that's 32 hours of work, 4 full days of working. Is that phone worth 4 days of your life? Time is your most precious asset. And so this trick can help you to see all the real cost of purchases and often motivates you to save that money instead. And here's a clever little upgrade. Work out your pay weekly, not monthly. So if you earn £1,000 a month, that's $250 a week. Psychologically, this changes how you think about money and your spending decisions. Now, the third trick is to automate your savings with small nudges. So choose one frequent purchase that you currently make. Maybe it's a subscription that you barely use or an impulse Amazon purchase, and redirect that money to savings instead. So don't just say, oh, I've not spent this month, I've saved money. Well, you haven't actually saved the money until you actually move it into a savings account, right? So go do that. Go choose an area where you're like, right, I'm not going to purchase that vitamin subscription because I really don't need it anymore, right? Or I'm going to kick my morning coffee habit, and actually set up a standing order to save that amount of money. And those incremental habits will compound over time, right? And if you want a little upgrade on this, rather than saving it, invest it. Invest it instead and see the rewards of changing those money habits. Trick number 4 then is to switch your language around money. Language really matters. Budgeting for many people feels restrictive. Who wants to restrict themselves after, they've very often worked hard for their money? So maybe savings planning feels more expensive and positive, or a spending plan, right? It very much depends on your money story type. And if you have done our quiz at katherinemorgan.com/quiz, we do give you some suggestions as to how you could shift your language so that it actually works. Okay. Trick number 5 is to focus on your timeline, not everybody else's. There is no golden rule for how much you should save. It really depends on your life stage, your circumstances, and your goals, okay? So stop comparing yourself to other people. Put those blinkers on. Come off social media if you're feeling FOMO, fear of missing out, or comparing yourselves to other people. And be realistic about your situation. I know it can feel really hard to sit there and wonder about all these other people that have these other lifestyles. But let me tell you something, having worked with multiple 6, 7, 8-figure business owners, they have more money and they are not happier. In fact, more money, more problems very often for them. So rather than feeling stuck and that you're alone or that you wish you had a different financial situation, I think actually just having some realistic reality on what is one step that you could make today to make you feel good about your relationship with money. And then let's talk about trick number 6. So this is about finding your spending patterns and redirecting one. So we all have emotional spending triggers. Maybe you feel inadequate. You buy courses all the time or multiple books that you don't actually read. Maybe you overshop when you're stressed, or when you're tired, or when you're bored, or when you're happy, when you're drunk in the middle of the night, right? I think identifying one spending habit, just one, and redirecting it into investments, not savings, investments. Connect it to something that feels incredibly motivational, right? Creating that pot of money that's going to enable you to retire early, or to have some money for yourself for something that is maybe completely unplanned, especially if you have an architect relationship with money. And here's a bonus trick. Psychologists know that we're more likely to start new habits around fresh beginnings, New Year, birthdays, the start of the month, a Monday morning. But you don't have to wait. So grab your phone, pick a date in your calendar, right? And put a reminder in there that says, Catherine says, create a fresh start financial intention. Don't wait for your birthday. Don't wait till January. Don't wait at all. Set a reminder in your phone. Have a money date with yourself. We provide a full money date template in our Female Financial Foundations course. I'll pop a link below in the description. Make it colourful, set an alert, go grab a friend and have an accountability partner. Record yourself talking about a rich relationship with money and what that looks like for you. You can create a fresh start effect whenever you need one. Because the truth is, your relationship with money is a mirror reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. Your ability to make money and hold on to money is reflected in how safe you feel with money. And safety is created through your narrative, the language you're using with yourself, how you feel about money. And these psychology principles work because they address the real reason that we struggle with money. And it's not just the practical piece, right? It's the deep psychological patterns that drive your behaviors. So if you want to dive deeper into the psychology work, I'll pop a link below to some further video resources on this that you can dive into. The key to understanding that financial success isn't about willpower or intelligence, it's about working with your money psychology. When you understand these psychology principles, saving money, investing money becomes more natural instead of a constant juggle or for somebody else. So there you have it, everything that you need to transform your relationship with money and start building the financial freedom that you deserve. We've covered how to get financially naked and discover your money story type, how to rewrite the stories that have been potentially sabotaging your success, create a debt freedom plan that actually works, knowing how to set motivating goals, implementing the 15 money weekly money routine, choosing the right places for your money, starting investing, and using money psychology to make saving or investing feel natural instead of forced. So you now have the complete roadmap to build wealth, just like the top 1%, regardless of where you are starting from. And the difference between people who transform their finances and those who stay stuck isn't just in the knowledge, it's in implementation. It's having the right tools, the step-by-step guidance, and the support to actually follow through. And that's exactly why I created the Female Financial Foundations course. Everything I've shared in this video, the money story types work, the debt elimination strategies, the 15-minute weekly routine, the goal-setting frameworks, the psychology tips, everything is in a comprehensive 4-step system that is designed specifically for women to take control of their money. We go through 4 main areas. The first one is managing the emotions, the beliefs, and the thoughts around money and rewriting some of those stories that are keeping you stuck. The second step is creating awareness of where money flows. The third step is building those strong foundations with dedicated money pots and debt elimination. And the fourth step is about maintaining momentum, creating this ongoing consistency with my 15-minute weekly habit. The course normally sells for $797, but right now I'm offering it for just £47 for the first 500 people. And within this course, you'll get the complete 4-step video course with workbooks and templates that you can work through at your own pace, lifetime access to all of the resources so that you can revisit whenever your circumstances change, and access to a private Facebook community of like-minded women. Plus, I'm also giving 3 incredible gifts. The first is my Pensions Made Simple course. This is a 9-module course to help you to demystify pensions completely. It will empower you to invest in your future without feeling overwhelmed by pensions and financial jargon. In that course, we have the pension consolidation checklist to discover how to navigate the process of consolidating your existing pensions. There's a checklist providing step-by-step guidance of how to evaluate your existing pensions, choosing the best options for consolidation, and learning what to do with those schemes. The second is a Future Me guided visualization track to help you define a vision for your future. Through this visualization exercise, you'll tap into your unconscious mind and unlock your deepest desires that enable you to create a really powerful, motivating vision for your financial future. There's also a Future Me spending planner, which allows you to map and plan forwards with accuracy and ease. A powerful tool that makes it easy to accurately plan that future spending. There's also a downloadable spending planner resource in there and some money mindset reset training audios to reprogram your unconscious relationship with money. So if you're ready to stop playing small with money and start building financial security, head over to katherinemorgan.com/female-financial-foundations. And if you're one of the first 500 people, you get to use the discount code FFF47 to get this £797 course for just £47. I'll see you inside the course. I can't wait to celebrate your financial wins with you. Thanks so much for watching.